Now, Matt, the next question that I really I don't even know if it's a question. It's more of a topic. CBS Sports 24/7 has released its preseason like way too early rankings as it does fairly consistently. And in their latest drop, 24/7 has labeled Baylor University as the number 5 school in the nation in college football going into next year's season. And I like at first I was like, damn straight. Yeah, that is us. Ugh. And now I'm like, no, this is the worst. I hate this. Baylor's never top 5 preseason. They're not going to be in the AP poll. What is going on at 24/7 Sports?
I'm trying to come up with a reason to disagree with this.
Right. That's the worst part.
I don't know, outside of the massive powerhouses in the SEC who are basically playing a different sport when it comes to, like we said, recruiting and development and investment into the program. Is there a school that feels more solid than Baylor right now? Right.
Yeah.
You look at the top, right? Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Oklahoma at 4, which I'm not sure I agree with that at all. And let me pause real quick. I'm looking at the correct list, right? May
Sure.
8th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should do it.
Okay. And Oklahoma at 4, which I don't agree with at all.
Right.
But Baylor at 5 feels right. I would take a Baylor if I'm being as objective as possible. I would take a Baylor over Michigan. I would take a Baylor over a Texas A&M, over Notre Dame, over Utah. I just don't see why Baylor would be lower than that. Great offensive line projections, great defensive line projections, awesome coordinators, steady head coach. Why couldn't this be the 5th best team in the nation?
Yeah, and maybe that is right. I'm struggling to try to disagree with Baylor being in the top 5, and I think you have to go back to the idea that, obviously, I don't think Texas is going to even outrank Baylor in the AP poll, but those kind of schools, the ones that these people point to, these national pundits point to and say they're better than a Baylor or better than, it's some years your Iowa States that sneak in there. And right now at 5, it's someone tweeted this out. They're like, this is the worst thing in the world because I want Baylor to have that underdog mentality going into next season. And this kind of hype for a university that lost its star players. Think about this: 6 guys in the NFL draft, 11 guys total gone to the NFL. And I was thinking about it yesterday, right? Like if I was going to put, okay, podcasting world. Let's break the fourth wall here for everybody at home. In the podcasting world, there's something called SEO. You probably know what it is. You go to YouTube and you're trying to find those buzzwords that are going to make people click on your podcast, on your link, whatever. And I was thinking, who are the SEO players back for Baylor next season, right? Because last year you had Terrell Bernard, Abram Smith, Treston Ebner, like Gary Bohannon, who, obviously. And then your Jalen Petries. I don't even know if that's a Jalen Petrie. So now those guys are gone. You've lost your SEO players, as I want to call them. How can you be a top 5 team when really the heart of your program is pretty much gone?
But Drake, those weren't SEO players before last season. To the nation, to us, of course.
I like where you're going with this, Matt.
Of course, right? But why can't this success be sustained? What would come? What usually disrupts a program who reaches, a top 10 status, right? It's, they had a generational quarterback. Everything else stayed the same, but the quarterback stayed the same. Or they had a flash in the pan offensive coordinator, right? That's usually kind of what happens when you see a spike in rankings for a particular smaller school. That's not the case here. This program's built off of defense, line play, and smart coordination, right? It feels right. Drake, how many times over the last 7-8 years has Baylor been like in the conversation for the playoff? Yeah. With all of us knowing that Baylor wouldn't make the playoff, but in the conversation for the top 7-ish spots. On the ESPN graphic, when they show the top 4, the first couple out, Baylor was amongst those. It makes complete sense to me. Have some faith. It's okay to be the hunted every once in a while, right? We went through this transition phase with the Scott Drew basketball program. This went from an underdog program to now we have a target on our backs every single season, and we expect to moving forward. And when you have a steady hand on the wheel in a Dave Aranda or a Scott Drew, it usually turns out okay.
Dave Aranda, good to surgeon, steady hand, the best.
Exactly.
And I guess, Matt, you're right. I should trust Dave Aranda and the Baylor Bears, number 5 in the nation, and not having the underdog well, one of the things, here's maybe why I hate it. Remember Michigan State? Or you know what? I could throw out so many of these freaking teams that kind of come out of the ashes out of nowhere, right? Matt Rule Baylor. Okay. 11 and
Sure.
1, transfers into 2 and 7. Granted, there was a ton of stuff that factored into that, right? You can't just say that without context. But there's so many schools that's like, wow, what a damn good year. And then the next year, it's like, whatever happened to them? You know, your NC State or your Wake, they'll have a flash in the pan and be gone. And it worries me that Baylor being at 5 next year is one of those examples of, oh, top preseason top 5, and then 7 and 5 finish.
Think of it this way. This is a reward for the type of program Dave Aranda is building. Not necessarily just because of the success last year, but because of the steadiness, right? And the way that this team is built. Baylor's not losing a generational quarterback. Love Gary, but we're not losing a generational quarterback. We're not losing generational skill position players, right? Looks like maybe the running back position might be more skilled, maybe equally as effective, but potentially more skilled, right? Defense has players to step up to at least replicate to some degree what this defense did last year. And it might look different, right? I trust this coaching staff to put the players in position to succeed, even if it looks different than last year, which is why I'm not terribly worried about losing 6 players, 11 players to the NFL.
Matt, I'll say this to kind of put the nail on that topic in itself is that when I look down up and down these 24/7 rankings that came out, one thing that I do see is Michigan State in their preseason rankings being put at that 16 spot. Granted, they beat Michigan last year, who beat Ohio State. The transitive property doesn't work in football, but that still takes you at least somewhere, right? And they're the same team that won a New Year's Six Bowl, and instead of being top 10, 24/7 has put them at 16. Baylor, on the other hand, in a very similar boat, winning the conference, though, and winning a New Year's Six Bowl, has been put at number 5. So it looks like this wasn't just a blind Baylor was good last year. Let's throw them up there as well. And maybe they're getting the national respect they deserve. But the next thing that I want to get to, Matt, to end it off, conference championship games. It was announced really today or in the last 24 hours that they could end up going away very soon. The ACC is looking at filtering theirs out, and different conferences are seeing options for rescheduling or new schedules for their conferences. But first, before we get to that, Matt, I want to tell you and everyone at home about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all things sports betting throughout the NBA playoffs right now, the MLB as well. I myself, I'll say it, I did it. I went and put a bet on first inning no score, for the game between the Rays and the Angels last night. And guess what? They didn't score in the first inning, the Rays or the Angels, and it hit at betonline.net. If you go today, you can also see the preseason top 10, because there are only 10 in the Big 12 next year, and their odds to win the conference. You'll be surprised to see where Baylor is, and it'll be a conversation we hit later this week. But at BetOnline, you can bet on the Baylor Bears to win the Big 12 at really solid odds. So MLB, NBA, you have fight season going on as well. BetOnline.net for your live betting, your esports, everything gaming, all of it at BetOnline.net, where the game starts.